Within each of us lies an unseen force, an inner resistance that ironically binds us to the past, keeping pain alive longer than it needs to be. This resistance becomes the chain that traps us in psychological torment. The human ego is wired to seek order, control, and safety. It craves predictability and recoils from discomfort. But life flows according to laws deeper than logic and rhythms beyond our understanding. When reality refuses to align with our expectations, the ego rebels. It resists, clings, and suffers. Consider the heartbreak after a relationship ends. The initial pain may soften over time, but the suffering that lingers, the obsessive thoughts, replayed memories, and the aching belief that things should have been different, is not caused by the loss itself. It arises from the refusal to surrender to what has already passed. This pattern holds true for betrayal, rejection, or failure as well. It's never the event itself that breaks you. It's the unwillingness to accept reality as it is. If this resonates, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever found yourself fighting to hold on to something that was already gone? How did that feel? This moment of refusal, the inner struggle to wrest control from reality, is the starting point of transformation. Instead of battling life, the invitation is to begin listening deeply to what life is showing you, to stop trying to control outcomes and instead observe with an open heart. True healing begins in spiritual acceptance, a profound practice often misunderstood. Radical acceptance doesn't mean defeat or approval of what happened. It's not about pretending the pain isn't there or resigning to suffering. Rather, it's an inner realignment, a conscious decision to stop fighting a war that can't be won and to redirect your energy toward growth and evolution. When you accept what is, not because it's comfortable, but because it's real, something alchemical occurs. The burden you carry becomes lighter, not because the pain vanishes, but because you remove the fuel of resistance. The mind and soul begin to heal when they no longer have to remain tense and defensive. Think about someone who's just lost their job. If they hold on to anger and replay every injustice, they risk dragging this pain into every future opportunity. But the moment they ask, "What now? What can I create from this?" they step out of victimhood and into their power. Pain becomes a teacher, a turning point. Have you ever experienced a moment where surrendering to reality led to unexpected strength? Share your story below. Carl Jung, the great psychologist, spoke about this process as integration. He believed that even the most painful experiences, when faced honestly and assimilated rather than pushed away, become fertile soil from which wisdom grows. One of the biggest mistakes we make is thinking our suffering is unique or too heavy for others to understand. Yet suffering is the common thread weaving through all human lives. Everyone suffers. The difference isn't in the pain itself, but in how we meet it. Some people resist and remain trapped in their pain, while others accept and begin a profound transformation. Jung's famous insight, "What you resist persists," reminds us that the pain we push away will find other ways to surface, through our bodies, relationships, or unconscious choices. Only when we fully acknowledge it can the cycle break. True freedom doesn't start when a painful event ends. It begins the moment you stop holding on so tightly. It wasn't just the breakup that shattered you. It was the story you kept telling yourself about how it should have been. It wasn't the betrayal alone that wounded you, but the grudge you nursed long after. Can you identify a story you've held on to that might be keeping you stuck? Let's talk about it below. Understanding this, we come face to face with the hidden architecture of our unconscious mind, the silent force that traps us in repetitive cycles of pain. Suffering doesn't arise merely from external events. It's born from our resistance to them. But knowing this raises a deeper question. If I already know this truth, why do I keep suffering the same emotional wounds repeatedly? This is where awareness begins to dawn. The answer lies in the unconscious forces within us that shape our experiences without our permission or even awareness. It's not the universe punishing you, nor cruel fate or bad luck. Instead, it is the deeply ingrained patterns laid down in your psyche long ago, patterns that repeat until they are brought to light. As Jung warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. What if the struggles you face are not random but echoes from your earliest emotional experiences? How does that change the way you see your pain? Have you noticed recurring patterns in your life, maybe the same kind of relationship issues or emotional responses? Share your thoughts. What pattern feels familiar to you? Your unconscious mind isn't your enemy. It's a loyal keeper of your earliest emotional truths, truths formed in the shadows before you had words to name them. If your childhood was marked by chaos, your nervous system adapted to that chaos as normal. If love was conditional or inconsistent, your mind learned to confuse pain with affection. These emotional scripts weren't consciously chosen, but absorbed and now silently run your life. The unconscious mind doesn't crave happiness. It craves familiarity, even if that familiarity is painful. This is why you might find yourself sabotaging joy, chasing harmful relationships, or attracting betrayals that mirror old wounds. The pullback to familiar emotional weather patterns isn't punishment, but an unconscious invitation to awaken and heal. Yet as long as these patterns stay invisible, you may blame fate or bad luck for your suffering. Why does this always happen to me, you might ask? In that question lies the key, because it is you, through unconscious repetition, who reenacts unresolved pain. Think about this. What recurring story or emotional pattern keeps showing up in your life? Drop a comment about your experience or insights. The repetition you notice, the same type of people, the same internal dramas, are not coincidences. They are emotional gravity pulling you toward what's familiar. If you learned early on that love equals pain, you unconsciously seek that pattern repeatedly. Not because you want to suffer, but because your mind recognizes it as safety, even if it hurts. Breaking free starts with awareness, not resistance. Bringing these unconscious patterns into the light requires radical self-honesty. Ask yourself, what emotion defines my life? What story am I still telling myself about who I am and how the world should be? When you answer from your soul, not your mask, you'll see your suffering is a mirror reflecting what's lived inside you all along. This is where true change begins, not through escape, but through revelation. What story do you think you've been telling yourself? Share your thoughts or experiences below. The journey inward continues as we explore the ego, that ancient architect of illusion, silently shaping your suffering. The ego does not heal. It clings to wounds, feeding off pain to survive. It convinces you that holding on to resentment and bitterness is justified, that others must change before you find peace. But this is a spiritual trap. The ego thrives on identity built around your pain and wounds. Each time you replay your story of "this always happens to me," the ego strengthens, weaving your suffering into a protective armor. This illusion convinces you that your pain defines who you are, and letting it go means losing yourself. Recognizing this is the first step toward liberation. Can you recall moments when your ego defended your pain? How did that affect your growth? Comment below. The ego's deepest illusion is that healing will come from outside, through someone else, some event, or a change in circumstances. This belief keeps us stuck in waiting, in powerlessness. But no savior is coming. The path to healing rises from within, from a conscious decision to stop replaying old pain. To dismantle the ego's hold, you must begin by observing the inner voice without judgment. Watch how it clings to wounds, feeding stories that keep you trapped. This voice is a survival tool, not a source of truth. Next, challenge the stories you tell yourself. Does this narrative empower me or chain me? If it enslaves you, gently release it. Then, do what the ego resists. Offer stillness when it demands reaction. Surrender when it calls for control. As you see the ego clearly, its power fades. You stop needing to be right or validated. In that quiet space, something extraordinary happens. You reconnect with your true self, free from the pain-based identity the ego created. Have you ever caught yourself repeating a painful story? How did it feel to question it? Tell me below. As you detach from the ego's grip, an emptiness may emerge. A quiet space once filled with noise, reactions, and old identities. This silence can feel unsettling, like standing at the edge of a cliff without a map. But don't rush to fill it. This is sacred ground. The void is not the absence of self. It's the beginning of truth. Here, your real self is not something you achieve, but something you uncover. Begin to ask, what is here beneath the fear? Often you will find a tender presence, a softness long buried. The ego taught you to armor up, to push through, to hide your tears. But this presence invites you to feel everything, to welcome grief, wonder, joy, and even confusion. You are not broken. You are becoming whole by embracing the forgotten parts of your being. In this space, healing deepens, not by force, but by permission. You permit yourself to be real, to not have it all figured out, to breathe without shame. You may cry without knowing why, laugh without a reason, or sit in stillness and feel more alive than ever. That is the soul awakening, unrushed, unafraid. Have you ever experienced that still moment where something in you shifted quietly, without drama? Share it with me. You've walked through the fire of self-examination. You've stood in the silence of the void, and now you are no longer who you were. Something in you has softened and deepened. You've begun to taste a kind of freedom that the world cannot give, and therefore cannot take away. This is the beginning of wholeness. You are not here to become someone else. You are here to remember who you are beneath the noise. Your worth is not earned, it's revealed. Your light was never lost, only covered. And now that light begins to shine not with effort, but with truth. You don't have to fix everything. You don't have to be perfect. You only need to show up, present, honest, open. In this space, love is not a reward, it is a presence. Peace is not a distant goal, it is a returning. You begin to feel connected to something greater, a divine rhythm, a holy whisper that says, you are enough, you are safe, you are home. You are not just healing, you are transforming. You are not just waking up, you are becoming a lighthouse for others still lost in the storm. And in your light, they too may remember, healing is possible, change is real, and even the darkest night gives way to dawn. So breathe, smile, let yourself rest in this new awareness. You've come so far, and your journey is far from over, but now you are walking it awake. If this message touched something deep within you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this with someone who needs to remember who they are. Leave a comment and tell me what part of your soul woke up on this journey. Together, we rise.